Hey guys, Everseen here. In today's video, I want to talk about defensive layers and how to stop dying in PoE 2. This is a series of videos I did in PoE 1 focused around a hardcore solo self-found mentality, which I will try to express today in this video. Now to be clear, I have been playing softcore solo self-found to learn the game, and recently I'm starting to get back into hardcore solo self-found again. Since my hardcore solo self-found experience in PoE 1, I felt that it was significantly easier for me to get well adjusted to how defenses work in PoE 2 and to just not die as much. In no way am I expressing that I'm a pro gamer, god gamer, the best there is, etc. I just have an overall foundation of understanding of defensive mechanics from both PoE 1 as well as PoE 2, and would like to share some strong components I've found in my journey thus far. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go over one of the strongest defensive layers in PoE 2 right now, and that is Evasion. Evasion is a tricky mechanic because Evasion only feels good if you have in the realm of 75% chance to evade and above. A common thing I would say in PoE 1 is that Evasion is great until you simply don't evade and then take the full damage of the hit. The one way that Evasion becomes extremely strong is when you couple it with other defensive layers. The more layers you have on top of your Evasion, the more effective it becomes. The thing that makes Evasion so strong in PoE 2 as opposed to PoE 1 is that you can evade spells as well, which for anyone who didn't play PoE 1, spell suppression was a stat that we needed so that we could actually take less spell damage. And this basically was mandatory on every single Evasion based build. So at a baseline, Evasion is simply stronger in PoE 2 than it was in PoE 1. Acrobatics is an extremely good keystone in PoE 2 because it doesn't have a cap of hits you can dodge like in PoE 1. Acrobatics dramatically reduces your evasion in PoE 2, but the upside is extremely good. We can dodge all hits, which means on-death effects as well as boss hits that normally could not be evaded. Now for some things to couple with Evasion to make it stronger, Acrobatics was one example and is more of an endgame strategy. Let's talk about a couple others. Wind Dancer goes hand in hand with Evasion builds. This spirit gem gives you more evasion rating per stack with a total of 3 stacks, and you lose 1 when you are hit. Since it gives us more evasion rating and not increased evasion rating, this means that it is multiplicative. More in this game is multiplicative and increased is additive. So all of your existing increases of evasion on the passive tree are getting multiplied, giving you more evasion. Make sure to quality this gem to full when you can because it gives 4 maximum stages. Wind Dancer will give 15 to 19% more evasion rating per stage based on the level of the spirit gem. So even at a lowest level with 4 stages, you're gaining a whopping 60% more evasion. Now to continue, Wind Dancer not only grants us tons of evasion, it will actually do an attack outward from your character in a Nova, which can apply different benefits if you put support gems in it. One that is extremely good is Blind. This support gem gives 100% chance to blind any enemy, and blind gives enemies 20% less accuracy. Less in this game is also a multiplicative stat that works the same as more, just the inverse. So the enemy is losing tons of accuracy. Enemies with less accuracy will hit you less often, thus providing you better effect of your evasion. And also time for Wind Dancer to recover stacks. Another support gem that's insanely valuable is Wind Wave. Basically when you are stunned, this will make Wind Dancer actually knock back enemies away from you, providing you with a protection against chain stuns or just being completely surrounded, giving you a window of opportunity to escape. There's a multitude of support gems that work with the skill like Pin, Maim, Culling Strike that will give you great benefits. The next thing I want to talk about is coupling Recovery with Evasion. Recovery is not simple to get in PoE 2, but there are a few exceptions. Life Regeneration, in my opinion, is very hard to invest in on an Evasion character, and more often than not, you will go for Energy Shield with Evasion characters. I want to talk about Grim Feast, but I also don't want to talk about Grim Feast because it is exceptionally busted and we all know this. Basically, Grim Feast gives 50% chance to create a remnant that can recover about 200 Energy Shield at a high level gem, and killing a whole pack nets you full HP. This is the strongest form of recovery we have available right now because it is basically instant, so use it while you can. Grim Feast can also double the energy shield value you have through overflow, which makes this extremely broken and strong. Next item I want to talk about is the Atziri's Disdain unique helmet, because this is probably one of the cheapest and best items in the game for life and energy shield hybrid builds. This helmet states that you will take 20 to 25% damage through your energy shield. At first glance, this looks terrible, right? I have, say, 1500 life and 5000 energy shield. Why would I want to take damage through my energy shield? Well, if you couple this with Grim Feast for your energy shield recovery, and also use cannibalism support on one of your spirit gems, you'll be recovering both energy shield and life at the same time because they're both taking damage. This is great because instead of just recovering energy shield, you're recovering both energy shield and life at the same time. The craziest part about this item is the modifier to get 25 to 30% of life as energy shield, which is even more energy shield than almost any rare helmet in the game will give you right now. Now, after Grim Feast is inevitably gutted, Ghost Dance is another spirit gem we can use to force recovery on our character. Basically, you will accrue Ghost Shrouds, and when you are hit similar to Wind Dancer, you will consume the Shrouds to provide you 5% of your evasion rating as energy shield. So this is another form of recovery that works well. For example, if you only have 10,000 evasion, which is pretty low in the late stages of the game, every time you are hit, you are gaining 500 energy shield while you have a Ghost Shroud. That's a lot of recovery. Another extremely strong form of defense is going to obviously be block. This basically functions the exact same way as evasion, where you don't take any damage from a blocked hit. Block will have a chance to block, which is considered passive block. Active block is different, however. With active block from either raised shield or shield charge, you'll block at 100% effectiveness in the direction you're facing. That is with the exception of unblockable hits, one example being bosses. You can't block attacks that show a red circle above a boss's head, and you will always take the damage. However, there is the unique shield, the Wailing Wall, which states you can block damage from all hits. This means even those boss hits can be blocked, which is insanely powerful. You can also achieve the same thing from the Turtle Charm Ascendancy Point from a Warbringer. Now, it wouldn't be a block discussion without discussing the most broken interaction of all, which is Lucky Block. This is obtained through the Svalinn shield that we actually just got introduced to in PoE 1 not long ago. Svalinn is one of the best unique items in the game due to its Lucky Block. This is currently the only way to achieve luck on block in PoE 2, therefore is a very valuable item. Luck in Path of Exile is pretty strong. Basically, whenever you are doing anything, whether it's damage or being hit, luck will interpret 2 values instead of 1. The higher of the 2 will take priority and be applied. There are several nodes on the passive tree that will net you life on a successful block, and if you are blocking quite frequently, that is a substantial amount of recovery. The Surrender is also a very nice shield that gives you 4% of your life when you successfully block. This unique combined with a high block chance will net you a lot of recovery on top of blocking hits. For example, for a character with only 3,000 life, recovering 4% of this would be 120 life per block. Really good recovery and scales well the higher amount of life you have. So as a traditional melee player myself, I was really excited to play melee in PoE 2, but I quickly kind of got crushed. And that brings us to our next topic, armor. I think armor, even with the patch 0.1.1 buffs to be around 15% more effective, it still feels unbelievably bad. I think that evasion and block are king here because of the sheer amount of projectiles and hits that are incoming on your character all the time. To have armor, you need to have tons of recovery because you are getting hit a lot. You are mitigating, but you also need the recovery. Block or evasion is actually going to help out armor characters a lot because it will help soften the repeated blows and give you more window for recovery. Having life regeneration is extremely important for an armor build as well. Mitigation is great, but needs to be met with recovery or else you're just going to get swarmed by hits and eventually die. The biggest and most detrimental part of doing any armor build right now is that your character's armor can be broken by monsters, effectively making your armor provide 0 defenses. Another main reason why I dislike armor in its current state and will not play it. Although armor has been bad, there have still been good builds that have been found. A technique that's become more popular is to reduce skill effect duration by a lot, like pretty much taking all of it on the tree, and using both Earthquake and Time of Need since they both benefit from less duration. If Time of Need is brought down to a 1 to 2 seconds window for a proc, this is an insane amount of recovery that can't be ignored. Arguably even stronger than life regeneration, however, if coupled with regen, is crazy recovery. Time of Need will cleanse any curses or elemental ailments, which basically makes you immune to both. Insanely strong to use on armor characters and feels almost mandatory. Not to mention this also makes your Hammer of the Gods basically an instant hit, which looks both crazy and comical. Another focus is on maximum elemental resistance that is going to help you mitigate those hits. Easier said than done though, because on evasion-based characters, we currently don't really need to invest in maximum elemental resistances because we're not hit as often as armor builds. Maximum resistances are so strong because they are actually exponential the higher the value goes. This is knowledge that I know from Path of Exile 1 because I've played a fair amount of Chieftain in my day, walking around with 90% all maximum resistances. The difference between 87% mitigation and 90% mitigation is actually a lot. That's why you can see a lot of people running around with 90% maximum fire resistance and the Cloak of Flame body armor, which converts 40% of physical damage to fire damage, which is heavily mitigated. We've talked about a few uniques and examples, but now I want to touch on even more that can help with your defenses. The first I want to talk about is the Hollow Hask unique helmet that provides an additional 15% physical damage reduction. This is a really good stat to have and is not very common in PoE 2, with the only other place to achieve this is through a shield at half the value with a maximum of 8% additional physical damage reduction. Additional physical damage reduction is going to work really well for bosses because a lot of them do physical damage. Physical damage reduction cannot exceed 90% though, keep this in mind. Getting additional physical damage reduction will help you get closer to 90% without needing way more armor. Basically, for anybody that has played either an Armour or Evasion build, you'll notice that once you start to get around the 80% to 90% range, it becomes really hard to increase that number. That's kind of where this helmet comes in to push you to that maximum. Ghostwrithe is another body armor that is extremely strong and actually has the same effect we talked about earlier with Atziri's Disdain, giving you 50% of your maximum life as energy shield, doubling the Atziri's Disdain helmet. This unique is not that good in endgame. It's much better as like a leveling, or if you just don't have good gear, you can just throw this on your character and it gives you like an insane amount of power. For hybrid builds, this is an insane boost to energy shield. The chaos resistance is also very helpful since on a hybrid build, that is a stat we need plenty of. The only downside of this unique is that you have to give up the one item on your build that probably provides you the most evasion, which is a rare body armor. Because let's face it, you're typically going to use this on an evasion character. There's not many characters right now that are doing armor and energy shield. There are a few more examples, but a lot of them use armor, and quite frankly, I just don't really feel like armor is good right now. It's in a really weak state, and I can't recommend using them. But a couple other examples would be Doryani's prototype. Basically what this does is it makes, like, say if you had minus 75 lightning resistance, the enemy would have the same, but your armor also applies to lightning damage taken from hits, so it's no longer your lightning resistance that's actually mitigating anything, it's more so your armor. And the last one would be Blackbraid Fur Plate, which is pretty good, honestly, if armor was just better, but like armor applies to elemental damage. It doesn't actually have a percentage. We've had things like this in PoE 1 where basically there was a Juggernaut ascendancy where 8% of your armor was applied to elemental damage, but this just states all of your armor applies to elemental damage. So it is really good when you kind of think about it in theory, but in practice, just because armor is so bad right now, it's really not worth it. But this is something to look out for in the future. It's definitely a really good item. So with a lot of defenses talked about throughout this video, there's definitely one conclusion we can come to is that energy shield based builds are really good right now. Being able to scale energy shield to numbers that life builds can never achieve, using things like chaos inoculation are so common because of these insane energy shield values we can get and the recovery along with Grim Feast. Being immune to chaos damage in a game like PoE 2 is a massive advantage as far as defenses go, and basically makes Ritual completely trivial. I'd like to see more life scaling come back into the game to give us more of a chance of maintaining large life pools. The problem is we just don't get enough life on builds, and most of the time to start out maps with 2k HP, we're lucky. Where instead you could have like 2k plus energy shield along with life on hybrid builds. That being said, with Grim Feast, you've got instant recovery along with double your energy shield in most cases, so it completely obliterates life-based builds out of the water. Anyways, guys, I hope you got some value out of this video and at least a better understanding of how and why defensive components are either good or bad right now. Thanks a lot for watching my video, and subscribe if you want to hear more things like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.